On my daughter's 40th birthday, I stood quietly in the kitchen, frosting a lemon cake, the same recipe Vanessa had adored as a child. As the scent of lemon and sugar filled the air, I smiled softly, imagining her face lighting up in delight. But when I presented the cake, Vanessa didn't smile. Instead, she looked me in the eye and said coldly, "The best gift you could give me is to disappear from my life." That night, I sat alone at my dining table, the lemon cake untouched, and in that crushing silence, I made a decision that would change everything. My name is Christine West, and I've always believed that love was measured in acts of service. For decades, I had poured myself into my daughter's happiness, staying up late to sew Halloween costumes, working extra shifts at the hospital to pay for dance lessons, and tucking away my own dreams so Vanessa could chase hers. Widowed young when my husband David passed away from a sudden heart attack, I carried the weight of two parents on my small shoulders, never letting my daughter feel the crushing absence of a father. I still remember the night after David's funeral. Vanessa was only 8, her small face confused and frightened as she asked when Daddy was coming home. I held her close, my own grief pushed aside, and promised that I would always be there for her. "You'll never be alone, sweetheart," I whispered into her hair. "Mom will always take care of you." And I did. I worked double shifts as a nurse, saved every penny, helped with homework late into the night even when my eyes burned with exhaustion. I cheered at every dance recital, bandaged every scraped knee, and celebrated every achievement as if it were the Olympic gold. When Vanessa needed braces, I sold my grandmother's silver to pay for them. When she wanted to attend a summer camp that cost more than a month's salary, I picked up weekend work at a retirement home. "You're too soft on that girl," my sister Sarah would say. "She needs to learn the value of things." But I couldn't bear to see disappointment on Vanessa's face. Not when I could prevent it. Not when I had promised David I would give her everything. Now at 62, I stood in my own kitchen, the one I had bought with my life savings, spreading frosting over a lemon cake. My hands moved carefully, fingers stiff from arthritis, but still steady. "This will make her smile," I whispered to myself. "She used to love this cake." By the time the sun reached its peak, the house smelled of warm sugar and zest. I changed into my nicest blouse, a soft blue one that David once said matched my eyes, brushed my silver hair, and set the table for lunch. I even arranged fresh daisies in a vase, Vanessa's favorite flowers since she was a little girl picking them in our backyard. The front door creaked open around noon. My heart leapt as Vanessa strode in, trailed by her husband, Marcus, and their 2 children, Zoe and Tyler. "Surprise," I said brightly. "I made you something special." Vanessa froze in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Marcus looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The children barely glanced at me as they shuffled past, eyes glued to their phones. "Mom," Vanessa began, her tone sharp. "What is all this?" "I baked your favorite lemon cake," I said, my smile faltering. "I thought we could have lunch together, just like old times." There was a heavy silence. "Honestly, Mom," Vanessa said, her voice rising, "you don't get it, do you? I don't need cakes or lunches. The best gift you could give me is to disappear from my life." The words struck like a knife. My throat tightened as my world tilted around me. I don't understand," I whispered. "You never do," Vanessa snapped. "You're always hovering, always meddling. I'm tired of it." Marcus shifted awkwardly but said nothing. The children stared at their phones, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. I felt my hands tremble as I smoothed my blouse. "I only wanted to celebrate you." "Well, don't," Vanessa said coldly. "We're leaving." Before I could respond, they were gone, the door slamming behind them with a finality that echoed through the house. I sank into a chair, staring at the untouched cake, its yellow frosting suddenly garish in the afternoon light. That night, I sat alone at the dining table, I tried to eat a slice of the lemon cake, but found I couldn't swallow past the lump in my throat. The house was silent, except for the ticking clock on the wall. The clock David had hung when we first moved in, promising we would fill this house with laughter and children. I thought about all the ways I had been shrinking myself over the years, giving up my bedroom so Vanessa and Marcus could have it when they stayed over, letting them repaint the living room in colors I hated, allowing them to borrow my savings to buy a second car. It was as if I had ceased to exist in my own home. When had this happened? When had I become a ghost in my own life in the days that followed? Vanessa didn't call. I began noticing other small things I had overlooked before. My favorite armchair, the one David gave me for our 10th anniversary, had been moved to the garage months ago when Vanessa said it clashed with the aesthetic. My mail was opened without my consent. Bills and personal letters alike spread across the kitchen counter. My bank statements showed withdrawals I hadn't made. I walked slowly through my house, touching walls that were no longer the soft cream David and I had chosen 30 years ago. But a harsh gray Vanessa had insisted on repainting to modernize the place. The warm floral curtains I'd sewn myself had been replaced with sterile white blinds. Even my kitchen, once the heart of my home, felt alien. My favorite tea mugs had vanished, replaced with trendy glass cups Vanessa brought in. I had surrendered each small battle, thinking it would keep the peace. But now I realized I had been slowly erased, painted over like the walls, until nothing of me remained in this house. I checked my online banking, something David had insisted I learn before he passed, and discovered Vanessa had accessed my account regularly, taking small amounts that added up to thousands over the past year. Money I had been saving for emergency medical expenses, given how expensive healthcare had become. My heart hammered in my chest as I scrolled through transaction after transaction. $200 here, $300 there, sometimes more, none of which I had authorized. This wasn't just about redecorating or moving furniture. This was theft. I printed the statements, my hands shaking slightly. Then I sat at my kitchen table, or what used to be my kitchen table before Vanessa replaced it with a sleek modern one I found uncomfortable, and began highlighting each unauthorized withdrawal. Yellow marks bloomed across the pages like bruises. The final straw came when I overheard Vanessa talking to a friend on the phone while she thought I was napping. "She should just sign the house over to us," Vanessa said, her voice carrying through the thin walls. "She's too old to manage it anyway. Did you know she forgot to pay the water bill last month? We had to handle it. It's exhausting." I hadn't forgotten the bill. Vanessa had taken it from my mail pile, saying she would help with my finances. My heart hardened. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to imagine a life that wasn't centered around Vanessa's happiness. A life where I wasn't constantly apologizing for taking up space, for having needs, for existing. That evening, I opened a blank journal I had received as a Christmas gift years ago but never used. On the first page, I wrote, "I have been invisible in my own home, but not anymore." I made a list of everything Vanessa and her family had taken: money, space, respect, and resolved to take back what was mine. The next morning, I visited a lawyer. The offices of Brown Legal Services were in a small building downtown, modest but well-kept. Eleanor Brown, a kind woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, listened carefully as I explained my situation. "I want to update my will and freeze access to my accounts," I said firmly, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Ms." Brown nodded, taking notes. "What about your house? You mentioned your daughter and her family have been staying with you." "They haven't been staying with me," I clarified. "They've been taking over. I want to reclaim full control." "Ms." Brown smiled, a small, approving curve of her lips. "You're doing the right thing, Mrs. West. Many women in your position struggle to set boundaries with adult children. Let's start with a financial power of attorney revocation and move from there." For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. The following week, I returned to Ms. Brown's office and signed the papers to freeze my accounts. I also initiated proceedings to reclaim full control of my house, including a formal notice asking Vanessa and her family to find their own housing within 60 days. It won't be easy, Ms. Brown warned. They'll push back. Family dynamics can get ugly in these situations. I'm ready, I said firmly. For the first time in years, I felt awake. When Vanessa discovered the frozen accounts, she stormed into my room, face flushed with anger. "What did you do?" she screamed. "I took back what's mine," I replied quietly. "You're insane. Do you want me and the kids out on the street?" I stood my ground. "You'll have to find your own way. Vanessa, this is my home, my life, and I won't let you take any more of it." Vanessa's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said softly, "but at least I'll have my dignity." The house was no longer silent. After I froze my accounts and began legal proceedings to regain control of my property, Vanessa turned the household into a war zone. The laughter of my grandchildren, once a source of joy, now felt like weapons thrown into the air. Doors slammed at all hours, voices were raised, and even the family dog seemed on edge, cowering under tables. I sat alone in the small guest room that had become my sanctuary. I clutched my journal to my chest and whispered into the quiet. I won't let them take everything. 2 weeks earlier, when I filed the papers, I expected resistance, but I didn't expect this. Vanessa refused to leave, claiming rights to the home she had grown up in. "This is my home, too," she screamed when I presented the legal documents. "You've lost your mind. Mom?" "No," I said calmly. "I found it." Marcus tried to mediate, but his words fell flat. He'd grown comfortable living under my roof. No rent, no real responsibility, just the occasional complaint about the Wi-Fi speed or the water pressure. "You're tearing the family apart," he said accusingly. "I think that's already happened," I replied quietly. In the following days, Vanessa began twisting the narrative. She called relatives, painting herself as a victim. "She's throwing us out on the street," Vanessa sobbed into the phone. "After everything we've done for her." Soon, my phone rang nonstop. Cousins, church friends, even distant neighbors called to scold me. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" "You'll die alone, Christine. Don't you care about your grandchildren?" Each call felt like a knife, but I refused to waver. I spoke to Sarah, expecting the same judgment, but she surprised me. "It's about time," she said gruffly. "That girl has been walking all over you for years. David would be proud you're finally standing up for yourself." Every night, I sat at my small wooden desk, writing in my journal. "I've sacrificed my peace for theirs too long. I won't go back." I reread old entries, tiny snapshots of a life spent shrinking to make room for others. The time Vanessa borrowed my car and wrecked it without apology. The day Marcus changed the Wi-Fi password, locking me out of my own network. The countless nights I sat alone while Vanessa's family filled my house with guests, never inviting me to join them. One evening, I stood in my kitchen boiling water for tea when Vanessa stormed in. "This ends now," she hissed. "You're going to call your lawyer and tell them to stop." "No." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "If you don't, you'll never see me or the kids again." My hands trembled as I placed the tea bag in my cup. "I hope it doesn't come to that," I said softly. "But I'm prepared if it does." Vanessa stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. "You've changed," she spat. "You used to care about family." "I still do," I replied. "But now I care about myself, too." That night, I found myself staring at an old photo of David. His kind eyes seemed to look right through me, the way they always had. "Am I doing the right thing?" I whispered to his image. There was no answer. Of course, but I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. David had always taught me to respect myself. It had taken me 62 years to truly understand what he meant. The eviction process dragged on for weeks. I began making small changes, reclaiming my favorite armchair from the garage, replacing the blinds in the kitchen with my old floral curtains. I even bought myself a bouquet of daisies. The first flowers I'd bought for myself in years. It felt like breathing again. The night before the final eviction deadline, I heard Vanessa and Marcus arguing in hushed tones. Their voices carried through the vents, a design flaw in this old house that had once allowed me to hear Vanessa's childhood prayers. "We can't afford our own place right now," Marcus hissed. "You know that." "Then fix it," Vanessa snapped. "Talk to her. Make her understand." "I've tried. Maybe she's right. We've been taking advantage." "Whose side are you on?" Their words faded as they moved away from the vent, but I'd heard enough. A small, petty part of me felt vindicated, but mostly, I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that somewhere along the way, my bright, loving daughter had become someone I barely recognized. The next morning, Marcus came to my room. "Christine," he said gently, "can we talk?" I looked up, wary. "We're leaving," he said. "We found a place to stay temporarily. Vanessa is upset, but I think it's for the best." I nodded, my heart heavy and light all at once. As Marcus walked away, he paused. "I'm sorry for how things turned out." "So am I," I whispered. The house was silent again. For the first time in years, I could walk from room to room without hearing footsteps thundering upstairs, without toys scattered across the hallway, without voices calling my name, not in anger, not in need, just silence. I stood in the middle of my living room and realized this silence wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. The morning after Vanessa and her family left, I stood in the doorway of the master bedroom. It still smelled faintly of her expensive perfume, the kind that cost more than my monthly prescription medications. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled in a rush to leave. Clothes hangers lay scattered on the floor, and drawers hung open like wounds. I walked to the window and opened it wide. Fresh air filled the room, carrying with it the scent of the rose bushes David had planted below. For the first time in years, it felt like mine again. Downstairs, boxes were piled near the front door, items Vanessa's family had left behind in their hasty departure. I sifted through them slowly, methodically. Designer clothes Vanessa hadn't bothered to pack. Toys the children had outgrown. Marcus's golf clubs, oddly, had been left leaning against the wall. I found an old family photo at the bottom of one box. Myself, David, and a teenage Vanessa grinning at a beach picnic. My chest tightened as I traced their faces with my finger. Vanessa's smile had been so genuine then, her eyes bright with that peculiar teenage mix of confidence and uncertainty. David's arm was around my shoulders, his face tanned and relaxed. Where did we lose each other? I whispered to the empty room. In the weeks that followed, I settled into a strange new rhythm. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, scrubbing away years of grime and clutter. I rearranged furniture, moving pieces back to where they had been before Vanessa's improvements. I filled vases with fresh flowers, baked bread for myself, and played the old jazz records that David and I had collected. But the nights were the hardest. I'd sit in my armchair with a book on my lap, reading the same sentence over and over, unable to concentrate. The house didn't echo with laughter anymore, but with memories, both sweet and bitter. I would catch myself listening for Tyler's footsteps or Zoe's giggles, only to be met with silence. One evening, nearly a month after they left, my phone rang. My heart leapt when I saw Vanessa's name. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and I missed her. I hesitated before answering. "Mom," Vanessa said flatly, "we need money." My momentary hope collapsed. "I can't." "Vanessa," I said softly, "I've helped enough." "You're unbelievable," she snapped. "You're abandoning your family." "No," I said firmly. "I'm saving myself." "Then you'll never see me or the kids again," Vanessa hissed before hanging up. I stared at the phone in my hand, my heart pounding. Was this truly the end? Would I never again hold Zoe and Tyler, never see them grow up? The thought was almost unbearable, but something had shifted in me. I would no longer be held hostage by threats and emotional manipulation. The next day, a letter arrived in the mail. It wasn't from Vanessa. It was from Mrs. Gloria Jenkins, the elderly neighbor 2 houses down. My hands trembled as I opened it, expecting more judgment, more accusations. Instead, I read, "Dear Christine, I don't know if you remember, but I've lived across from you for 25 years. I've watched from my window as you carried burdens no one should bear alone. I saw how hard you worked to raise Vanessa, how you welcomed her family into your home, and how they took over. I never said anything because I didn't want to interfere, but I want you to know this. I see you. I've always seen you, and I think you're braver than you realize. With love, Gloria Jenkins." I clutched the letter to my chest as tears spilled down my cheeks. For so long, I had felt invisible, even to myself, but in that moment, I realized I wasn't. Someone had been witnessing my life all along, seeing my struggles, my sacrifices, and now, my courage. That evening, I lit a candle in the living room and sat down with my journal. "I thought losing Vanessa would break me," I wrote, "but maybe it's teaching me how to live again." The days grew longer, and so did my sense of solitude. Each morning I walked through my quiet house, running my fingers along the smooth wooden banister David once built. The rooms felt larger now, emptier, but also lighter, as though years of tension had been lifted from the walls. For the first time in decades, I could breathe. I began exploring corners of my own life I had long abandoned. In the attic, I found old sketchbooks from my 20s, before motherhood consumed every moment. I had wanted to be an artist once, had even taken classes at the community college. David had encouraged my drawing, framing my amateur sketches and hanging them proudly. Sitting by the window, I began sketching again, delicate flowers, quiet landscapes, and sometimes faces I could never quite finish. At first, my hands shook, my lines hesitant. But soon the movements felt natural, like reconnecting with an old friend. I enrolled in an art class at the local community center, a small room with large windows and the perpetual smell of erasers and coffee. "I haven't done this in years," I admitted shyly to the instructor, a cheerful woman named Rebecca with colorful glasses and paint-spattered jeans. "Well, it's never too late to start," Rebecca said warmly, patting my shoulder. "Art doesn't care how old you are." Each Thursday, I sat among strangers who gradually became acquaintances, and then, surprisingly, friends. At first, I barely spoke, but slowly my voice returned. Soft, careful words at first, then laughter I hadn't heard in my own throat in years. "I feel silly drawing at my age," I confessed one afternoon, looking at my charcoal-smudged fingers. "Nonsense," said an older man across the table, his white beard dusted with pastels. "You're not silly. You're free. Free." The words settled in my chest like a warm stone. At home, I found myself humming again as I cooked dinner for one. I rearranged the furniture in the living room, bought a new set of curtains, and filled the walls with my own drawings. It wasn't a house anymore. It was mine. But Vanessa's voice still echoed in my mind at night. "You're abandoning your family. You'll die alone." The words wrapped around me like a cold fog, creeping in as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. 3 months passed without a word from her. I called on Zoe's birthday, but my call went straight to voicemail. I sent cards for both children, but never knew if they received them. I left messages that were never returned. One rainy evening in April, my phone rang. I hesitated when I saw Vanessa's name. With a deep breath, I answered. "Mom," Vanessa's voice cracked. "We're struggling. The kids miss you." My heart ached. "I miss them too," I said softly. I shouldn't have said those things before." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. I waited, listening to her breathing on the other end. "Can we come back?" Vanessa asked. "Just until we get back on our feet." I closed my eyes. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but I also heard the warning in my own heart. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about necessity. "I'm sorry, Vanessa," I whispered, but I can't let things go back to how they were. You need to build your own life now. There was silence on the other end. Then Vanessa hung up. I sat quietly, tears streaming down my cheeks. But this time, my tears weren't just sorrow, they were release. The next day, I walked to the community garden near my house and knelt in the soil. I planted lavender and rosemary, letting my fingers sink into the earth. It felt like planting pieces of myself, parts I was only now rediscovering. Spring came quietly, painting Fairview in soft greens and blooms of color. I stood at my kitchen window, a steaming cup of tea in my hands. The garden outside was alive with lavender, rosemary, and daisies, all planted by my own hands. For the first time in decades, I felt like I belonged to myself. It had been 3 months since Vanessa's last call. I thought about her often, not with anger, but with a tender ache in my chest. I hoped she was finding her own strength, too. But I didn't regret my decision. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking to fit into someone else's story. I was writing my own. One bright afternoon, I walked to the community center for my art class. I carried a small portfolio under my arm, my latest sketches which Rebecca had encouraged me to display in the upcoming spring showcase. "Are you nervous?" Rebecca asked with a smile. "A little," I admitted, "but also proud." "You should be." At the art showcase, I stood by my drawings, delicate sketches of flowers, hands, and faces full of emotion. "Did you make these?" a young woman asked, stopping in front of a drawing of an elderly woman's hands, each wrinkle meticulously rendered. "Yes," I said softly. "They're beautiful," she said, meeting my eyes. "You can feel the life in them," I smiled. "Thank you." For years, I had been invisible, but here in this small community hall, strangers saw me, not as a caretaker, not as a burden, but as a woman with a voice and vision of her own. After the showcase, Rebecca invited the class for coffee at a nearby cafe. I hesitated. I rarely went out in the evenings anymore, but something pushed me to accept. Sitting around a table with these people who knew nothing of my past but accepted my present was strangely liberating. "To Christine," Rebecca raised her mug, "our newest exhibiting artist." Everyone clinked their cups, and warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the coffee. Later that week, I received another letter from Mrs. Jenkins. "Christine, I walked past your garden today. It's beautiful, just like you. I hope you know how many women like us are watching you and finding courage in your story. You remind us it's never too late to reclaim our lives. With admiration. Gloria." I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal that evening. I sat in my favorite armchair, the soft light of the setting sun streaming through the window. I picked up my journal and began to write. For so long, I thought my worth came from what I gave others, my time, my money, my love, but now I see that I was always enough, not as a mother, not as a caretaker, but as Christine. I'm not disappearing. I'm finally here. I closed the journal, my heart full and light. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to find 2 young girls from the neighborhood holding a basket of muffins. "Hi, Mrs. West?" one chirped. "Mom says these are for you. She says your garden inspires her." I knelt to their level, smiling. "Tell your mom I said thank you," I replied warmly. The girls waved and ran off, their laughter echoing down the street. I stood in the doorway for a moment, the breeze brushing my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. A week later, I was in my garden, pruning roses, when a familiar car pulled into my driveway. My heart stuttered as Vanessa stepped out. She looked thinner, her face drawn and tired. She approached cautiously, stopping at the edge of the garden. "Mom," she said, her voice small. I straightened, wiping my hands on my gardening apron. "Vanessa, your garden looks nice." It was such an ordinary observation, so unlike the cutting remarks I'd grown accustomed to. I nodded. "Thank you." We stood in awkward silence, years of hurt stretching between us. "I'm sorry," Vanessa finally said, the words rushing out. I've been horrible to you. The things I said, the way I treated you, I have no excuse. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. What changed? Vanessa looked down. We've been struggling. Marcus lost his job. And I realized how much we took from you. How much I took. She paused. And then I saw your drawing at the community center. My drawing. The one of hands. They were your hands. Weren't they? I recognized them. They looked so strong, even with the arthritis. I remembered how those hands used to braid my hair, make me soup when I was sick. Tears filled her eyes. I've been so selfish. I wanted to rush to her, to embrace her as I always had, but something held me back. Vanessa, I'll always love you, but I can't go back to how things were. I know, she whispered. I'm not asking for that. I miss my mom. The simple honesty of those words broke something open in me. I've missed you too. Could we maybe have tea sometime? She asked tentatively. Just to talk. It was a small request, a tiny bridge across the chasm between us. I'd like that, I said. As Vanessa turned to go, she hesitated. The kids ask about you. They'd like to see you. I'd like that too, I said, feeling the first tender shoots of hope. After she left, I sat on the garden bench, emotions swirling. Was this a genuine change of heart? Or just another manipulation only time would tell? But for once, I wasn't rushing to sacrifice myself at the first sign of reconciliation. I would move forward cautiously, protecting the self I had worked so hard to reclaim. The following Sunday, Vanessa brought Zoe and Tyler for lunch. The children were shy at first, as though meeting a stranger, but when I brought out a plate of freshly baked cookies, the ice began to melt. Grandma, did you really make these? Tyler asked, chocolate smeared on his chin. I did, I smiled. Would you like to help me make the next batch? His eager nod warmed my heart. Zoe, now 12 and on the cusp of adolescence, was more reserved. She sat quietly, observing, until she noticed the sketchbook on the side table. You draw? She asked, surprise in her voice. I do. Would you like to see? She nodded, and I handed her the book. As she flipped through the pages, her eyes widened. These are really good. Grandma. Thank you, Zoe. Could you teach me sometime? I'd love to, I said, meeting Vanessa's eyes over Zoe's head. Something passed between us, a recognition, perhaps, of cycles broken and new possibilities. After they left, I added a note to my journal. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means building something new from the ruins of what was broken. The next day, Ms. Brown called with news. The house is officially secured in your name only. Mrs. West, I've also set up the trust fund as you requested. Your savings are protected for your healthcare needs, with provisions for your grandchildren's education. Thank you, I said, feeling a weight lift. What about the amendment to my will? All done. Vanessa will inherit the house eventually, but the terms are clear. She cannot sell it during your lifetime. Even with your permission, your residence is protected. It wasn't about punishing Vanessa. It was about ensuring I would never again be pushed out of my own life. That evening, I started a small painting. Not just a sketch this time, but a full watercolor. It showed a garden in bloom, with a small silver-haired figure tending to the plants. Behind her, barely visible but unmistakably there, were 2 children and a younger woman, watching from a respectful distance. I titled it, Boundaries in Bloom, and hung it in the hallway. Our tea meetings became a weekly ritual. At first, they were stilted, full of careful conversation and avoided topics. But gradually, as spring turned to summer, something shifted. Vanessa began to really share about her life, her struggles, her fears. I've started seeing someone, she admitted during our 3rd meeting. A therapist. That's good, I said carefully. I'm trying to understand why I treated you the way I did. She twisted her napkin. I think I was angry at you for a long time. Angry why? Vanessa looked out the window. Because you were so perfect. After Dad died, you never fell apart. You just kept going, doing everything, being everything. I felt like I could never measure up. I almost laughed. Perfect Vanessa. I was terrified every single day. I cried myself to sleep most nights. You did. She looked genuinely shocked. Of course. I didn't want you to see. I thought I needed to be strong for you. So I never learned how to be strong for myself, she said softly. I just learned how to take. The honesty in her words made my heart ache. Had my protection become its own form of harm? As we continued meeting, I began to see how my own choices had contributed to our broken relationship. In trying to shield Vanessa from pain, I'd never taught her resilience. In giving everything, I'd never shown her boundaries. It was a painful recognition, but a necessary one. One evening, Vanessa brought a photo album I hadn't seen in years. I found this when we were moving, she said, placing it on the table between us. Together, we turned the pages, reminiscing about birthdays, vacations, ordinary days made special by David's presence. There was a photo of Vanessa's 5th birthday, her face lit with joy as she opened a gift, a small easel and paint set. You love to paint too, I realized aloud. I'd forgotten. So had I, Vanessa admitted. I haven't done anything creative in years. It's never too late to start again, I said, the words feeling familiar on my tongue. She smiled, a genuine smile that reminded me of the girl in the photographs. Maybe you're right. July brought sweltering heat and an unexpected invitation. Marcus, who had found a new job with a tech company, called to ask if I would join them for a weekend at his company's lakeside cabin. The kids would love it, he added, and so would we. I hesitated. A weekend in close quarters with Vanessa's family felt like a test I wasn't sure I was ready for. I'll drive myself, I said finally, so I can come and go as I need to. Of course, Marcus agreed readily. Whatever makes you comfortable. The cabin turned out to be a charming rustic retreat on the shores of Lake Morrison, about an hour from Fairview. I arrived Saturday morning, my car packed with art supplies for Zoe and a homemade blueberry pie that was Tyler's favorite. Vanessa greeted me with a genuine hug, still somewhat awkward, but warm. We're glad you came, Mom. Marcus waved from the dock where he was teaching Tyler to fish. Zoe emerged from the cabin, already clutching her sketchbook. Grandma, can we go draw the lake now? I laughed. Let me at least bring my bags in first. The day unfolded pleasantly. Zoe and I found a perfect spot on a rocky outcropping where we could see the entire sweep of the lake. I showed her how to capture the play of light on water, the perspective of mountains receding into the distance. You're so good at this, Zoe said, watching me work. Why didn't you start painting sooner? The question caught me off guard with its innocent directness. I did, actually, when I was young. But then life got busy. I had your mom, and worked as a nurse, and there just didn't seem to be time. Zoe considered this. But there's always time for the things that matter, right? That's what you told me. I smiled at having my own wisdom reflected back to me. You're right, I should have made time. But I'm making up for it now. I'm glad, Zoe said, returning to her sketch. You seem happier when you're painting. Out of the mouths of babes, I thought. Dinner that night was a communal affair, with Marcus grilling fish they'd caught and Vanessa preparing a salad. I noticed small changes in their dynamic. The way Marcus thanked Vanessa for her help, the absence of the snippy comments that had once characterized their interactions. This is delicious, I said, savoring the fresh trout. Marcus has been taking cooking classes, Vanessa said with a hint of pride. He makes dinner 3 nights a week now. It's my therapy, Marcus admitted. Cheaper than a shrink. We all laughed, and I caught Vanessa's eye across the table. There was an understanding there, a mutual recognition of how far we'd all come. After the children went to bed, the 3 of us sat on the porch, watching stars emerge over the lake. The silence was comfortable, punctuated only by the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. "Mom," Vanessa said finally, "I've been wanting to tell you something." I turned to her, heart quickening slightly. "I'm seeing a therapist," she said. "Have been for about 6 months now." "That's good," I said carefully, unsure where this was leading. "She's helping me understand some things about myself, about why I treated you the way I did." Vanessa took a deep breath. I was scared of ending up alone, of Marcus leaving like Dad did. "Your father didn't leave," I interrupted gently. "He died." "Vanessa." "I know, but the result was the same. You were alone, struggling. I watched you sacrifice everything for me, and I think I resented you for it, for making me feel like I had to be worth all that sacrifice." I sat with her words, feeling their truth settle over me. How had I never seen this in trying to protect Vanessa from feeling her father's absence? Had I inadvertently burdened her? And then when I had my own family, Vanessa continued, "I think I was trying to take back everything I felt you had taken from me, my independence, my choices. I took your house, your money, your dignity, and I justified it by telling myself you owed me." Marcus reached over and took her hand, supporting her through this difficult confession. "I'm not telling you this to make excuses," Vanessa said, wiping away tears. "Nothing excuses how I treated you. I'm telling you because I want you to know I'm working on it, on myself, and because I'm sorry, Mom, truly sorry." I felt tears on my own cheeks. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "It helps me understand too." We sat in silence again, but it was a healing silence, full of unspoken forgiveness. The next morning, I woke early and slipped out to the dock with my sketchbook. The lake was still, reflecting the pink-gold dawn like a mirror. I began to draw, losing myself in the peaceful scene. "That's beautiful." I turned to see Marcus standing behind me, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. He offered one to me and sat down at a respectful distance. "Vanessa's still sleeping," he said. "She was up late, worried she'd said too much or not enough." I nodded, accepting the coffee gratefully. It was enough, more than I expected. Honestly, Marcus stared out at the lake. "I failed you too," he said quietly. "I saw how she was treating you, and I did nothing. Worse than nothing. I participated." "Why?" I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely curious. He sighed. "Weakness, I guess. Fear of rocking the boat, and maybe some entitlement too. It was easier to take what you offered than to stand on our own feet." He met my eyes directly. "I'm sorry, Christine." "Thank you," I said simply. We sat in companionable silence, watching a pair of ducks glide across the water. "You know," Marcus said eventually, "you've changed how I think about growing older. Before, I saw it as just decline, something to fear. But you're more alive now than when we first met. It's like you're expanding instead of contracting." I considered his words. "That's exactly how it feels," I agreed. "Like I'm finally taking up the space I deserve." Summer arrived with a burst of heat and color. My garden flourished, and so did my art. Teaching the beginner's workshop brought unexpected joy as I watched older adults discover or rediscover creative expression. Some were tentative at first, apologizing for amateur efforts, but I recognized the hunger in their eyes, the same longing for self-expression that had awakened in me. "Forget perfection," I told them on our first day. "Seek connection with yourself, with what you see, with how you feel. The technique will come." By the third week, the atmosphere had transformed from hesitant to enthusiastic. Phyllis, a 70-year-old former accountant, discovered a talent for bold, expressionistic landscapes. Walter, a widower like myself, found solace in meticulous still lifes of ordinary objects: his late wife's reading glasses, a well-worn baseball glove, keys on a hook. "You've created a safe space here," the program director told me after observing a class. "They trust you." Trust, it was a gift I didn't take lightly. When Rebecca returned from a summer workshop in Santa Fe, bronzed by the desert sun and brimming with new ideas. She insisted on seeing my latest work. "Christine West," she exclaimed, examining the paintings in my sunroom studio. "You found your voice." "Have I asked, surprised by her assessment. "Absolutely. There's a distinctive quality to your work now. This interplay of light and shadow. The way you render hands, it's unmistakably yours." Her words stayed with me as I prepared for my largest exhibition yet, a featured show at the Fairview Community Gallery in October. 20 pieces, all completed within the last year, would be displayed for 3 weeks. The gallery director had suggested a theme: visible portraits of women over 60. I had spent months on the collection, painting women in my community: Mrs. Jenkins in her garden, Elaine from my book club with her beloved cello, Phyllis from my art class, hands covered in vibrant paint, my sister Sarah, her face lined but fierce as she trained for her 10th marathon at 68. Each portrait captured not just a likeness, but a life fully lived, a woman who refused to disappear with age. The week before the exhibition, I received an unexpected visitor. A sleek black car pulled into my driveway, and a young woman in a tailored suit emerged. She introduced herself as Natalie Morgan, director of the Westfield Art Center in the city. "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit," she said. "I saw your work in a small show last month and wanted to speak with you directly." Over tea in my kitchen, she explained that Westfield was planning a special exhibition for Women's History Month titled "Late Bloomers Female Artists Who Began After 50. "We'd like to include your work," she said. "Specifically, your portraits of older women. They're remarkable, unsentimental, but deeply compassionate." I nearly dropped my teacup. Westfield was no community gallery. It was a prestigious regional art center that featured established artists. I'm flattered," I stammered. "But I'm still very new to this, self-taught, mostly." Natalie smiled. "That's precisely what interests us. Your work has an authenticity that formal training sometimes polishes away. You see these women, really see them." She left me with her card and a request to consider the opportunity. After she departed, I sat in my garden, overwhelmed by the possibilities opening before me. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I would be considering a prestigious exhibition, I would have thought them delusional. Yet here I was. I called Vanessa that evening to share the news. "Mom, that's incredible," she exclaimed with genuine enthusiasm. "Westfield is a big deal. Zoe and I visited there on a school trip last year. I'm not sure I'm ready for something so visible," I admitted. "Isn't that the whole point?" Vanessa asked softly. "Being visible again." Her insight surprised me. "Yes," I said after a moment. "Yes, I suppose it is." "Then you have to do it," she said firmly, "and we'll all be there on opening night." The night of my community gallery opening arrived crisp and clear. I wore a deep blue dress that brought out my eyes and a silver necklace David had given me on our 25th anniversary. Mrs. Jenkins insisted on driving us both, despite my protest that I could manage. "Nonsense," she said. "Artists shouldn't have to worry about parking on their big night." The gallery was already crowded when we arrived. Rebecca greeted me with a warm hug. "Ready to shine?" I nodded, though butterflies danced in my stomach. My eyes scanned the room, noting familiar faces, my art class students, neighbors, friends from the book club, and then, standing near the center of the gallery, Vanessa, Marcus, and the children, all dressed in their best clothes. Zoe rushed over, enveloping me in a hug. "Grandma, this is so cool. Everyone's talking about your paintings." Tyler, looking uncomfortable in a button-up shirt, added, "Yeah, and there's fancy cheese too." I laughed, grateful for his grounding presence. The gallery director clinked a glass for attention and gave a brief introduction, speaking eloquently about the theme of visibility and my journey as an artist. Then she invited me to say a few words. Standing before the crowd, I felt a momentary panic, but then I looked at my paintings lining the walls, all those women who had trusted me to see them, to render their strength and vulnerability on canvas. I owed them my courage. 3 years ago, I began, I was told that the best gift I could give would be to disappear. It was a devastating moment, but also a wake-up call. I glanced at Vanessa, who gave me an encouraging nod. I realized I had already been disappearing for years, making myself smaller, quieter, less demanding, less visible. These paintings are my answer to that. Not just my refusal to disappear, but my celebration of women who remain vibrantly present in their sixth, seventh, eighth decades and beyond. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. Each woman here, I continued, gesturing to the portraits, has taught me something about resilience, about joy, about claiming space in a world that often looks past us as we age. They've shown me that life doesn't diminish with years. It deepens, grows richer, more complex. As I spoke, I noticed Natalie Morgan at the back of the room. She caught my eye and smiled approvingly. So this exhibition isn't just about being seen by others, I concluded. It's about seeing ourselves, our worth, our beauty, our enduring right to take up space in this world. Thank you all for witnessing that with me tonight. The applause was warm and sustained. As people moved to examine the paintings more closely, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers. The evening passed in a blur of conversations, congratulations, and to my astonishment, red, sold dots appearing beside several pieces. Near the end of the night, Natalie approached me. That was a beautiful speech, Christine, and I'm even more convinced that you belong in our exhibition. Have you decided? I looked around the gallery at my work, at the people engaging with it, at the community that had formed around this act of creation and witnessing. Yes, I said firmly. I'd be honored to participate. Later. As the crowd thinned, Vanessa found me sitting on a bench, taking a moment of quiet. I'm so proud of you, Mom, she said, sitting beside me. Thank you, I replied, realizing how long I had waited to hear those words from her. I've been thinking about what you said, about disappearing. I never really understood until tonight what I was asking you to do. She reached for my hand. I'm sorry. I know, I said, squeezing her fingers gently. We sat in comfortable silence, watching as Marcus helped the gallery staff carefully wrap a sold painting for its new owner. Life is funny, isn't it? Vanessa mused. 3 years ago, everything fell apart. But look what's grown from the rubble. I nodded, thinking of all the unexpected gifts that had emerged from that painful time, my rediscovered passion for art, new friendships, a stronger sense of self, and yes, even this slowly healing relationship with my daughter. Do you regret any of it? Vanessa asked hesitantly. I considered the question carefully. I regret the pain we caused each other, I said finally. But I don't regret finding myself again. I don't think I could have done that without the breaking point. Vanessa nodded thoughtfully. Me neither. The next morning, I woke early and made myself a cup of tea. I carried it out to the garden, which was touched with autumn gold now, the flowers fading but still beautiful in their seasonal transition. I thought about the journey of the past 3 years, from invisibility to recognition, from self-abandonment to self-discovery. It hadn't been easy. There had been days of doubt, of loneliness, of wondering if I had made the right choices. But sitting in my garden with the morning sun warming my face, I knew with absolute certainty that I had. My phone chimed with a text from Zoe Grandma. My art teacher loved the techniques you showed me. Can we paint again this weekend? I smiled and typed back, Of course, Fa. Sweetheart, my door is always open. And it was, open to new possibilities, open to deeper connections, open to the full, rich life I was still creating, day by day. That evening, I added a final entry to the journal I had begun 3 years ago when Vanessa told me to disappear. She didn't realize she was actually calling me to appear, fully, authentically, unapologetically. The journey from invisibility to visibility hasn't been straight or easy. There have been detours, setbacks, moments of doubt, but each step has led me here. To this place of peace and purpose, I am Christine West, artist, teacher, mother, grandmother, friend. I take up space in this world without apology. I am seen, and more importantly, I see myself clearly now. I haven't disappeared. I've emerged.